Hi everybody, my name is Cheri. Welcome to my stamp studio. We are going to continue on with another sneak peek from the upcoming holiday mini catalog. If you're my customer, they'll be in the mail to you by the end of this week. I'm going to work on them some this afternoon and then get a bunch of them up to the post office and then kind of check and see those of you that requested new ones that aren't already on my mailing list. I'm going to work through all that this week. I have so much to do this week. So this mini catalog starts September 6th. I have a try it class. It's getting really close to full. I would say it's 85% full. I haven't checked since I got home from being out of town. But if you go watch this video, if you're unfamiliar with my try it classes, it's a chance for you to see all of the papers, to have all of the new embellishments, all the new ribbons, a selection of punches. The punch I'm using today, I'm pretty sure I'm going to fit in there. So this card's done and cut for the number of people that I want to have in it. So once we get to the number that my husband cut over the weekend, I'm going to close the class. So this, go watch this video and sign up for the try it class. It's a super fun way because you don't end up with lots of paper and all of the stuff. You just end up being able to see it because you actually make 10 cards with me. So it's a template, fun fold kind of class, and we don't do any stamping, so that you can add a sentiment at the end if you want. If you need a new catalog, if you don't have a demonstrator sending you one, I'd be happy to. Just let me know. You can message me, and then I'll just quickly show you some of the ones that I've done so far. So you can, if you've missed any of these are all on there, and this is all new stuff. New stuff's so much fun, isn't it? So those are all up, and I have a playlist, so you can just click that if you want to see them. So today I'm going to do an autumn card. I'm going to do Pick of the Patch, which is a punch bundle here. It's not part of a suite or anything, so it doesn't have any paper that goes with it. So I intended to do a Christmas card this morning. It's gloomy, gloomy, gloomy. So, you know, we're getting towards the end of August and summer's my time. And I had told myself last week that no matter what, I was going to get into the pool every day. Well, the no matter what doesn't include, there's no sun, and it's been raining since we caught up, and it's supposed to rain all day, and it's like 70. So much for me telling myself that. I should have asked God if he could have assisted me, because next week I'll be in Las Vegas. So this is it for me in summer. It's very sad. But this paper is Joy of Christmas, and I got this out and I was going to do a Joy of Christmas card. I'm going to move to that next, but it just felt yucky. It felt a little fallish. And as I pulled this paper out, what I love about our double-sided papers is that we always have two sides. So on this one, actually I'm using both sides, but this wood grain, even though it's a Christmas pack of paper, and like we have this music wood grain and the red gingham. So on one side, I always call them the other sides. Like this is the Christmas side, right? But then you have this other side. On this one, if you look ever so slightly, it's holly. Holly berries on there, but you could put that through a folder and nobody would ever know. And then again, we have some more music. I love this sheet of paper. So obviously that's the Christmas side. I must be missing a couple. Beautiful. This is the back of the catalog. Those of you that have the catalog already, that's what's on the back. The Joy of Christmas, which I'll show you when I do the Joy of Christmas stamps with this paper, is the front of the current catalog, holiday catalog. So let's get going on this. Sometimes when you see this and it's a punch pack, because I like my cards a little bit more artsy, and this is kind of fun and funky, and a lot of you like that style. But what I like about this one is that you can do it all kinds of different ways. So we're going to art it up just a little bit, and doing that, I'm going to use our Watercolor 100 watercolor paper to create the pumpkins and kind of a little backdrop. So both of these take a tiny bit of time to draw. We're going to create a background. I did this recently for our upcoming card club. This is just going to be 3 colors instead of 2 that card was. And we're going to create a fun little background. So let me show you. I'm going to use this piece of paper because it looks very autumnish, right? It can be Christmas. It could be summertime. It's really any season. You could put some a floral bouquet on it. It can be spring. So this is all season. The other side then has the green gingham, which is pretty Christmassy. But again, it could be any season. So this is 5 1/4 by 4. And I cut 2 of those, which left me this little strip. So this one then I cut in half. So I have enough of this for 2 cards. So I'm going to lay that there. So this is kind of where my color palette started. I want it to look fall and rustic. So we're going to take this piece here and we're just going to create the background. My brush is a little bit dirty, but it doesn't matter for this one because it's going to all, I want it to all have shades of brown, and as it runs together, it will fill that in. So I'm creating right now, and plus when I do it with clear water, it's really hard for you guys to see. So I intentionally leave it a little bit dirty when I do this so you can see it better. So we've just let a little bit of water soak into that paper. I'm going to use shaded spruce to pull in that green from the paper because there's no green in my stamps. So you can see where I've done that outline. I'm just going to grab some of the shaded spruce, and when you touch it to the paper, it will kind of run into your square. So I'm just going to add some spruce. The spruce is going to be the least amount of color that I have, because at least in Indiana, when we go to the pumpkin patch, there's color, but we still have green. Like, stuff hasn't died. So our leaves are, like the apple leaves will still be greenish, and the grass is still green. So I'm going to pull this in to be the green of my pumpkin patch. Just kind of like that. And then I'm going to take a tissue, and I'm just going to dry that off. I pulled up a lot of green, so I'm going to try to get this out a little bit. But again, my colors can mix. This is our water painter. I love the water painters. I use them all the time. Now this water that's here, I'm just going to pull that over before I add more. Try not to get my card incredibly wet. So now I'm going to do another kind of a third. It doesn't have to be perfect. And the color's only going to go where you have water. So that's how you're able to keep that fun box pattern. Now let's do some copper clay. So we'll go from the grass to the trees, and then we'll add in some autumn sky color. So this is, what did I say it was? Yeah, copper clay. So again, you just kind of touch it. It will mix a little bit, and it will pull into the other colors. And you can let this dry, and if you don't like it, you can add a little bit more. You can put some water on it and sop it up if you didn't like someplace. And every single time you do these, they're going to be different. So if you love one, then celebrate it, because you might not get another one. Now I'm going to pull this copper clay, and we're going to go Cajun Craze, which are 2 buddy colors. They're very similar. So it doesn't really matter how much of that I wash out of my brush. You don't want it to be all the way copper. It won't pull in any Cajun. I like my sides to be a little bit crookedy, and I'll add a little bit more. Okay, let's grab our Cajun Craze. If you have a hard time squishing the lid to the cover, just take your refill and put some refill in there. See, they're very similar in color, but this is just a tad brighter, and you'll notice it on the card. So you can see right there where there are different colors. Now, I did notice that one of these colors can dry a little bit on the pink side. So if you don't want any pink, I like pink pumpkins, but if you don't want any, then you need to kind of make sure that everything has some color depth on it, because right here that may add a tiny bit of pink to our card, just because it's a red based color. I'm going to add a tiny bit more of the green, which is kind of dangerous because I'm going to have to clean it all out of my brush again. But I want that to be a little bit more green right there. So I'll just grab this. I'm not going to add any more water unless I need to. See, there's water there that I can kind of work into it. That will also help it dry if I can kind of get some of that water used up. Now I'm just going to add just a touch of pecan pie. You could do any of the darker browns just to kind of pull the wood grain into it. And these are fun if you have old retired colors, you can use them. Just mix and match whatever fall color palette you kind of want on there. Just get this kind of down here. You can stop, you can let it dry, kind of let the water settle, and then come back and play with it. It's really a lot of fun. But you can't do this on white or vanilla. It has to be the watercolor, or if you still have some of the shimmery white, you can do it on that. But you're putting so much water that the colors on the other one would pill. So I'm going to set this aside. You can also take it and let your, see if you can do that. See how that color is moving? You just want to make sure you don't go outside of the line, so kind of play with it. But you can see right here, now that's a little bit empty and we're getting that the pink. It doesn't bother me because, like I said, I like pink pumpkins, but I know some of you are fall purists. So we have that. Whoops. Now let's do our pumpkins. We're going to use the watercolor paper for these two. You'll have to be really careful. You can see right here, I pinched myself with my punch the first time I did it because you have to push really hard with the punch on the watercolor paper, so be careful. I was trying to go quickly, and that's not a wise idea. So I took my pumpkins and I punched them out of a piece of just scrap cardstock that was laying on my table, and then I laid it this way on my block. You want to make sure it's the right way that the punch is going. And for this one, these are pretty symmetrical, so it's a little bit hard to tell. The stem is not, so you need to lay your template the way that the stem goes. If you have it on this way, which sometimes is a mistake that people make because they tell me that they try this template thing and it doesn't work, but it's because you're putting your paper on backwards, so that when you stamp, it's going to be backwards. But on this one, you'll be able to tell because the stem doesn't fit. The pumpkins, the first time I had it on wrong, and I did the stem last, and then I realized I did. So I just laid the paper here, and then I lined up all my stamps and just added them. That way I'll be able to punch them all out at once, and I don't have to use excessive amounts of watercolor cardstock. I'm going to use pumpkin pie. That was an easy color choice. I'm just going to stamp the whole thing in pumpkin pie. You want it nice and inked up. And then we're going to stamp it on this piece here. It does take a second longer for the watercolor cardstock to absorb our ink. So just press it and give it a second. But on this one, we're going to add some color anyway. So if it doesn't get great color on there, you're okay. See where there's not great color? You can see it's still left on here because this is just a super absorbent paper. So it takes it a second for it to dry. I'm going to go back and take my painter, and the same thing we did before. I'm just going to add a drop of water to each section of pumpkin. You don't want too much, but you want that color to start moving. And then I'm not going to do it to my leaf because it's tiny. So I'm going to come over here and just kind of fill that back in with some. You can see how it's moving and where all those dots were, and now it looks a little bit more watercolored. It matches our panel that we're going to lay it on, and it all goes with that wood. Once you squeeze this original amount of water out, you can not really need to squeeze your thing anymore. You don't want too much water on these. So we have that. Now let's get Cajun Craze again because it's a great color. You could probably also use the copper clay. It's a new in color, so I haven't used it as much, but Cajun and pumpkin go really well together. And this will tone down our whole card and make it a little bit more, like if I was going to give it to a child, I might do this and then add some yellow or some red and make it bright and fun. This is going to make it a little bit more realistic and fall looking. Same way that water moves in our block is the same way it moves in here. So as long as you've kept the water inside your sections of pumpkin, the way the stamp is, it's just going to stay there. So see, this is just adding a little bit of shading. You just go a shade darker. So whatever, if you're doing a flower and you're doing the leaves, then stamp in a lighter green and then go back and add the color with a darker. And you don't want it everywhere. You just want it in little bits. It's easier. I just kind of go where it looks like it needs to be touched up, where I didn't quite get there with the water, and I can just kind of move it over there. And if you put too much, then all of a sudden you'll have a Cajun pumpkin, and then you'll have to brighten it up with some pumpkin pie again. But that's the fun thing about the watercolor cardstock, is that you can kind of keep working with it. This one's a little bit brighter, I think, than my other one. So I'm going to leave it like that. And we'll compare the two. It could also just be that it needs to dry. So I'm going to try to keep my lines in the middle of this leaf. So you don't want a whole lot of water on here because it will smudge. So now let's get some of the copper clay, because you know those leaves in the fall are changing colors. Thankfully that hasn't happened yet. You could add a little bit of red, you could add a little bit of green, you could add whatever color you want. I'm going to add a little bit of pecan. And then I'm going to go over here to the stem and get a little bit of pecan to make my stem a little browner. I don't want a pumpkin pie colored stem, but it was just easier to stamp them all the same color. And I kind of like when they have the little wavy edge to make them look like you watercolored it. And I'm just going to clean off my brush, because there's a little bit of those other colors in here. And then we'll just let that sit and dry a second, because you don't want to put that in the punch when it's that wet. Otherwise it'll just smear. Then to clean this out, just do this. If you are lucky and your studio has a sink, then just run it off in the sink. I don't, so I make lots of use of tissues. Here's where I tried a bunch of different things with pumpkins, and I have a little bit left here. So the set has this super fun little crow, and at first he wasn't on the card, but I have a metal crow that looks kind of like this that I put up in the fall. So while I don't want summer to be over, I do love my fall decorations. Let's put it down here so I can get a couple more out of it. And again, hold it down, let that ink absorb. There we go. And then I want my, this to be clean and pretty dry. So, because you know we just sopped all that water out of it. Here's my very wet tissue now. But I don't want this to be wet, and I'm going to grab a little bit of the pumpkin and not pull water out. I'm just going to use the wet brush to give her a little bit of color, and then this way you just wipe it off like that. It didn't soak back up into the thing. The other one I did her eye in green because I didn't want to pull in another color. I don't like her green eye, so I'm just going to leave this eye white. I'll have to go to my website and look at the close-ups of them. Then this is a punch bundle, and it punches this. That's all it's going to punch out. So I'm going to take my snips and I'm going to trim this out. All right, so I've trimmed her out. Now let's go ahead. You can see this is drying, but you can still see some wet water on it. Now if you're in a hurry, you can sop it up with another clean tissue, but what's going to happen is it is going to also take out some of the color, and I love this color. Isn't that pretty? So I don't want to do that. Same with this one over here. This one's getting drier, and this one obviously you could use, and I'll probably finish the card before it's all the way dry. Let yours dry all the way, because when you stick adhesive on it, it doesn't stick very well when it's wet, but we'll go ahead and mount the card together so you can see it. So for the base of my card, I have crumb cake, which there's no crumb cake ink, there's no crumb cake in the paper. The only crumb cake is the card base. You don't have to be super matchy-matchy with everything. So let's take this, and we're going to add our strip of green. Let's just add this, which was just our little scrap of green. I love that the paper, the gingham is crooked, because then if you don't put yours on straight, it doesn't matter. Then this is the ribbon that comes, it's a ribbon combo, and it comes with the fall suite, the All About Leaves that I showed you the Try It class card for. So I'm going to get a strip of the copper. I love this, and it looks really pretty with our pumpkin card. So just as long as the card, this one I'm not doing any wrapping around, so it can be just as long or just a tad shorter. And then I cut this to be the same, but I'm not going to waste it, because I cut this like this, and then I trimmed this in half. So I still have my other half from the original card. So you're left with this. This is my half. And I'm going to take my strings and I'm going to pull them out. But I was really tempted to put these on the card. I'm not going to, but I'm saving them because this is also usable ribbon. So when you deconstruct your ribbon, a lot of times you're left with 2 pieces. Well, this is 4 cards I can get out of this 1 piece. I shouldn't have pulled that many at one time because I'm stacking those over here to use on another card. And then we're going to use this frayed piece here, which I really like the phrase for an autumn card. I'm going to stick this on here. For those of you that live overseas, we do call it autumn. When I lived in Australia, people only thought we called it fall. We don't. We call it both. We know that the season is autumn, but kind of we just use both. It's interchangeable. But I know sometimes people think that Americans only say fall. So we have that. I don't even think this set, I'm kind of looking over there as I'm taping, it doesn't say fall in it. It has some really good sentiments. I went with You're the Pick of the Patch, but it has a Thanksgiving and a Halloween and a thank you and then a cutie pie, which, you know, we're getting up into pumpkin spice everything season, but there's nothing better than pumpkin pie. So we have this, and then I'm not going to wrap around. I want those edges, the frayed edges, to stay frayed. And sometimes when you wrap them around, it pulls them funny. So cut those. I'm doing as much as I can to let that watercolor cardstock dry. These scissors need to be sharpened. I have a list a mile long of stuff my husband can do when I'm in Nevada. We'll see how much of it gets done. Most of it will be cutting for Try It, but I'm hoping that he can paint this desk and sharpen my scissors. So now I told you I went with You're the Pick of the Patch. I almost put Harvest Blessings, which is great all-time fall card to send to anybody. I like You're the Pick of the Patch because it makes a perfect birthday card. And anybody that has a fall birthday, this would be perfect for them. So I'm going to stamp it in Versamark. And then I'm just going to add it right down here to the corner. Make sure I have orange ink everywhere. So if I immediately film my Christmas card, you will see my orange ink. I have that on there. And then I'm going to use white embossing powder because I want my color to really pop. And here's the scrap piece that I punched out of. So I'm just going to use this. I'm not going to get my embossing tray out for this tiny bit of white. Make sure that it is everywhere. I'm missing part of my H, which happens, and part of my P, just because I didn't use a lot of powder. When I use my embossing tray, I just pour the whole thing in it because it's just going right back in. And that way you make sure you have everything. Let's heat set that. It's easy to see this one turn because white powder is, I think, the easiest. Maybe the white and the gold, but see, you can see that's turned. Then it makes those words really pop off the page. Now, while I have my heat tool out, we can see this is still really wet right there. This one's pretty good. So the back side of it will be fine. We'll heat it for just a second, and then we'll see if we lose any color. If I start losing color, I'm gonna back it away. Yeah, you can see that what was not pink is getting more pink with that. But it dried it just a fraction, maybe the same with this pumpkin. Which if it goes a little pink, it'll just match the background, right? Okay. Now there's no standing water. I liked this better before I heat set it. I hope you saw the way the colors changed. Fortunately, the pumpkins will cover up a lot of that, and you can always kind of mess with where your placement goes. Now, here is where you want to be really careful when you're using the watercolor cardstock. If you're using watercolor cardstock and you're punching one image, it's not difficult, but it does take some strength, and that's how I pinched myself. Nothing like starting your work week with a workplace injury, right? I should report myself to my boss, but that'd be talking to myself. So I'm going to put this in here. You can see how they line up. Trying to let you see, which makes it harder for me. So there we go. Now this time I'm going to lay it on the table. I'm less likely to punch myself. And then I'm also going to stand up. You have to hold on to it so it kind of doesn't move out of there. and punch it that way. That way my hands were not in the way when you're doing it. I don't even know why I was doing it in the air. Silly me. But our template lined these up nicely. That one moved a little bit when I stood up, but we're good. So stick this on here. That looks like fall just like that, doesn't it? Now I'm going to tell you something else. If pumpkins aren't your thing, I want you to look at this, pretend this says words out of that set, but how cool would this background be with the truck, with trucking along? So you can do the same card, and instead of sticking a pumpkin on here, put the truck and then just some of the truck words and have an autumn truck with this rusty Cajun look with that. That would be super fun. And it's one way that's wet, so when it's wet, put your adhesive here. This card would fall apart if I was going to send it in the mail, but it's okay because I will glue it all back together before it ever gets sent, because it just needs to dry a little bit more. So I want my pumpkins to look like they're in the patch, and see, this will cover up a little bit of where I lost my color, but it's not going to stick well. And I know this may not even stick at all. No, I got it that time. But it's not going to be a great stick. The dimensionals will stick a little bit better, but again, they would fall out. So just give it 10 minutes and it would be all the way dry. It would also dry a whole lot quicker if it wasn't pouring rain here. And I have the windows open because who wants to pay for air conditioning when it's 70 and raining, right? Let's just stick these on here. That covers up a lot of it. This little bit right here is a little purpley, but we're okay. Then for this one, you're gonna need some scraps or some of the mini dimensionals. My iPad, I didn't turn it off. And even though my phone's turned off, I can tell I'm getting messages over there. So, because you can see this is little and it needs one. Sometimes Mondays are a little rough for me. Last week I was on a roll, and before we left to go out of town, I knew this would happen because when you stamp all the time, you get lots of ideas and you just really are going for it. And then all it takes is a little break and you're like, yeah, I don't know what stamps I own. I don't know how to stamp. I don't know how to stamp cleanly, obviously. So that's on there. That isn't even sticking at all. I'll fix that later. So then we have our crow. So I want him to go here. He may stick. That side of the pumpkin might be. Isn't he just cute? Yeah, it's not going to stick very well. But that's not, I don't want you to think that the watercolor cardstock doesn't stick. It just needed a minute, which I didn't give it. Then I'm going to take a little bit of my Stella and put some frost on the pumpkins because it looks really pretty. And that is also, you can see it in there because when I color with my Stella and my ink pads, some of it stays in the lids on some of the colors, depending on which ones I've used, and that pulled into the Cajun paint. So I'm mostly hitting the frosty parts where it's darker, and that'll make it show up really well. I hope you can see it. And then I'm going to do the same thing to my little guy over here because he's a little splotchy, but the splotches are perfect for adding that. He just needs a color. His eye needs, there, maybe that tones it down a little bit because the green didn't work. I thought you could have a green-eyed crow, but no. I'll show you that in a second. And then for the, I don't know if these are part of this suite or not, but they looked really good. They're the adhesive back speckled dots. They are also in the holiday catalog. I'm going to put 5 because I like this pecan color and then the crumb cake. And I made my card before I chose the background color of paper. Hopefully these will stick. So I'm going to do one of the big ones, 2 of the big ones. Whoops, I don't want it there. And then I think it was partly because of these that the crumb cake cardstock looks so nice. In my head, it was probably going to go on vanilla, but the vanilla looked not great with that. And one more. So do we want it over here or over here? I think I'm going to go over here. super fun. Isn't that cute? Now this one, I really love all of the colors except right there. It could be a little less. And you can always go back even when your card is done. That's the wonder of watercolor cardstock. And I could add some color to it. Here's my other one. So you can see it's all going to look a little bit different because you don't have that much control over the watercolor. See the sparkle? I hope you can see the sparkle. And see his green eye? Wasn't a fan. Here's one here. Before I just added a tiny bit of green, and then I tried to sop it up so I could finish my card. And when I sopped it, it all just smeared. So that's kind of what happens. This one has more of this because more was in the lid. I kind of like that, but sopping is not great. Don't sop it up. Just let it dry on its own, because then you get this. This one was totally dried on its own, no sopping. This one had a little bit, and it did. You can see this. It did that there. But super fun. Play with the watercolor cardstock. Play with water when you stamp. If you're interested in getting catalog, if you want to be on my email list, if you want to do any of my online classes, join my online card club. All that information is on my website or in my emails. Have a great week. Bye.